Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Press Break podcast. We are coming at you. I guess I'm the only one who's in a different location today, so you get this lovely background. But we are coming with our last show of 2024, which is wild. 2025 is coming up in a few days. I guess maybe some of you are listening to this in 2025, which is wild.
Bro, the future.
But we are going to give a little bit of a preview into 2025 in like a different way with a twist. We're going to talk about a few teams that we're a little worried about going into the new year and a few teams that we think have a lot to gain as we head into conference play for college. There hasn't really been any WNBA or other news coming out, which is good, a little break from some of that wildness, but free agency is coming, so we'll get our fair share. So we're going to stick to college right now.
We'll get refilled.
But yeah, there was like a 4-day break from college games, but they're back. We didn't have that long of a break. Not enough for us to miss a week. Of course, we wouldn't want to miss a week regardless. But we are going to start with each of us have picked a team that we think have the most to lose going into conference play and conference tournaments. And the tournament, it's all going to go so fast. So let's start with Tyler, because you were kind of the one who came up with this idea. So I'm curious to hear what you have to say about your team that you think has the most to lose going into this new year.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's several really good picks for this, to be honest. I think a lot of it has to do with what you did in non-con, realistically, and the cushion that you built for yourself in non-con. And the team that famously does not build themselves a cushion in the non-con is the team that, frankly, I'm a little bit worried about, and that is LSU. LSU confuses me, and in the sense that they are so talented on paper, and they have struggled to really get everyone rolling at the same time in the same game. Like it's kind of felt like most games it's been either it's the perimeter play from Flau'jae and Michaela that are really taking over, or it's the interior play with Anissa. And like that's kind of a good problem to have in a way, and the fact that you can win in different ways is a good thing. But ultimately, there's some of these games in this non-con that get inflated point spread wise at the very end. Most like the most recent one they played yesterday from the time we're recording this on Sunday against Albany, and they win that game 83-61, and that could not tell less of the story of this game. Like the fourth quarter, like they certainly pulled away and did what they had to do to win that game. So I don't want to like take away the credit from winning the game and doing what they had to do after the first through third quarters that they had. But LSU won this game based on their rebounding, and because they shot poorly from three, it took a while for them just to get rolling at all. And so when they go into the SEC play and they're matched up with teams that can rebound with them, whether it be via size or being able to hustle with them in whatever kind of form that takes, because you have some teams like a Texas that just has a ton of size with them, or you have a team like South Carolina whose bigs just are constantly working kind of in the same way that we see from LSU's. When you play against these teams, how do you plan on winning? And that's where I worry about not having the interior and the exterior play working at the same time. And frankly, like I said, they haven't given themselves much cushion in the non-conference play. Their only ranked win is against NC State, and NC State hasn't been doing them any favors. Like they just got a solid win against Clemson, but frankly, NC State is not the Final Four team. Like, they made a Final Four run. This doesn't look like a Final Four team this year. They have, it just doesn't. So for LSU, there's not a ton of wiggle room in the sense of when you play these ranked games, you kind of got to win them. And because if you lose them, and there's certainly higher games like a South Carolina, a Texas, where there's more forgiveness to be given. But against these, quote unquote mid-tier SEC teams, which are still mostly ranked teams, like there's not going to be as much forgiveness for those losses if those occur. And so I'm a little bit worried for LSU in that sense, and just finding out how they can rise to competition, which we've seen them do it in the past. So like it's certainly not unheard of for them to do this with the bad non-conference schedule going into SEC play. But it doesn't make me any less. My nerves are still there even with the past issue.
A big part of it is that the SEC is so difficult. So like your margin's already slim.
Exactly.
It's not
you're gonna take some losses.
Pile on LSU, whatever. It's that let's just look at the entire scheme of the
Mm-hmm.
SEC, where you have this perennial powerhouse league as well as adding in Oklahoma, adding Texas. Like, it's
Mm-hmm.
gonna be a really wild year in that conference.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't understand the logic behind not doing any more than just like one ranked team in non-con. Like, I feel like they probably could have scheduled a game against like a Notre
Yeah,
Dame
I
or
mean,
like
like you would like looking at their schedule, right? Like obviously you have to kind of schedule ahead. Like you would expect Stanford on any other year to be a good,
True.
a ranked team. So like I'll give them a little bit of grace for that. Like that Stanford game is frankly normally just a better game than it was in this year, and that game ended up being a very close game anyways. And Stanford has like, don't get me wrong, Stanford has some players on that team, so I don't want to just like I ain't just trashing Stanford. I feel like they're like, dang, what'd you say F me for? But I ain't doing that. But but no, it's I mean it's always kind of been like to the point is I think from their perspective, and obviously this has been a conversation that's been had with LSU for really since Kim Mulkey got there, really about the SEC being so stacked that you can get away with playing quote unquote nobody in the non-conference, and you still pick up plenty of resume building wins in SEC play if you're built for it.
yeah, the
I'm
hard
just
way.
I'm just ready to see if LSU is built for it this year.
Yeah.
Like I said,
Yeah.
there's past history to suggest that they're going to be fine,
Mhm.
but it's a different team this year.
They have a lot of new faces there. They have a
Mhm.
lot of players that have maybe played at the Power 5 level, but haven't produced at the level that LSU is going to need them to. I think of Jersey Wolfenbarger and how she's looked really great at times during the non-con, but she hasn't gone up against the caliber of players she's mostly going to see while she's in SEC play. And so that particular kind of situation really intrigues me. But I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm excited that we get to have some of those questions answered sooner rather than later,
Yeah.
because they just have so many interesting dynamic players. I just want to see them perform at the peak of what they're capable of. And that's, I think, what everyone really wants.
For sure.
Yeah.
Now on paper
It's
they're
just
stacked.
Yeah,
Like,
it's hard to
when you-
judge too, because again, they haven't played any of the SEC. I just like, the SEC is one that's going to be so interesting because obviously South Carolina is kind of the like quote unquote favorite, but there's so many schools in that conference that could just like, I don't know, that they're just
No,
so
I mean
powerful.
this is like early on in the season I have been talking about. Oh, I think the Big Ten is the best conference in
Yeah,
the nation, and I still think like I'm not ready to backtrack on that yet. But
no,
the middle of the SEC, and it's different teams than I think some people might have expected, and I think
Mhm.
that like, and we're gonna probably talk about some of those, so I don't want to get too far into that. But
yeah,
just the SEC from top to bottom, like the top of the top is still ridiculous. Like the top of the SEC to me is still the best across any conference,
yeah,
and so like that's kind of a given, right? But the middle of the SEC, whether it be a Tennessee, for example, being better than maybe people expected in Kim Caldwell's first year, like those are the type of opponents where like in the past 2 or 3 years, a little bit smoother sailing. This year, you don't really have that luxury, and that's to Jamie's point, with not even getting into adding Texas and Oklahoma to this already stacked conference. So it's gonna be grueling, man. It is, and figuring out how else you can survive, that's gonna be super super interesting to me.
yeah, for sure. My pick for the team that has the most to lose is also going to kind of hit on one of those highly ranked teams. I decided to go with UConn, and I think
Mm.
I don't know our faithful commenters might not like this one, but I
What?
just think
No.
criticism. I just think that like there's so much pressure on this program, and like there's always pressure on this program. Don't get me wrong, but like it's the last year of like the Paige Beckers era, and there's probably I don't have it in front of me, but it's probably their longest drought without a national title in a very long time. Um, you have this great player who was like kind of gonna come and save women's basketball and all this stuff, and she's still the greatest player, but don't get me wrong, now it's like the time, it feels like the clock is winding down and someone
The
is
sun
like,
is
oh,
setting on it.
the sun is setting, and then you have so
Mm.
many players in that program that were so promising, and then injuries and like the injury bug that this poor team has gone through in the past few years has just been so hard to watch. And
Mhm.
even Az Fudd was someone that I was so excited to watch, and now like again the sun is setting on her UConn career as well, like most likely. And I mean, she hasn't confirmed or denied anything yet, but and all of these things. I just think there's so much pressure on them. In that USC game, we were talking about it before, and I mean, we talked about it a lot last week, but was such a make or break game for their season and such a big point of their resume because they don't
Mm.
face very many more ranked opponents before we get into like bracket making and hosting for the tournament and all of that. And I just think, obviously they're still going to do really well in the Big East because it's the Big East. But I'm just worried when it comes to things like keeping healthy, when it comes to the tournament, when it comes to facing teams like USC and Notre Dame, who they've lost against, and they haven't played South Carolina yet, but that's coming. And Tennessee is going to be an interesting one as well. And then you get into the tournament, and they could face some of these other teams like UCLA and
Hmm.
Texas and stuff like that. And I just, from what we've seen so far of the team that they currently have, I'm just again not sure if they have what it takes to go up against those big teams. They struggle to have, depth in the center position. I mean, Sarah Strong has been incredible, but again, like not the size matchup to some of these teams, especially when you
Hmm.
think about the SEC and stuff like that. So I don't know. I just, as someone who's followed Paige's trajectory as well, it's just like you want her to succeed so bad, but it's just like there's so much pressure on it to be right now and in this year that it's going to be really, I think, crushing in a way, like not just for the players, but like I don't know. It's just hard to think about them being able to make it that far with what we've seen so far.
Hmm. Yeah, I
But
mean, like it's.
on the
I
other
mean,
hand, also
mhm, go
writing
ahead.
a piece today where I was comparing Paige to Juju to Hannah. I was doing like a player of the year thing.
Mm,
And I put all of, and I was up in the her hoop stats. I was doing the stats and trying to highlight who was the highest in each one. And those three players are so incredibly even when it comes to like when you get into the advanced stats. Like
mhm.
Doggle will have one and Paige will have the other. Juju has a bunch, and it's
Oh,
like,
it's ridiculous.
oh, it's ridiculous. So it's like, okay, then she still could make miracles happen because she's one of the best players that we've ever seen. But like, it just seems like there's so much stacked up against them right now that it's hard to think about, how they match up against some of these really big teams.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Like I said, it's. And I know we had touched on it last week as well, but like
Mhm.
it comes down to you got 2 games.
Yep.
You really got 2 games to make it count. And frankly, if they lose, like just hypothetically, if they
Mhm.
lose to Tennessee and South Carolina, I don't know. And but let's say they run the table in the Big East, like they lose both those games. I don't know if that'll be enough to keep them off of 4 line, like just based on pedigree almost, and like and knowing like the talent that UConn has, frankly.
Mhm.
Um, but I mean, I think even just from a mentality standpoint of going into March, like at
Mhm.
some like you like to have those obviously you have ranked wins from earlier in the season,
Yeah.
but if assuming Tennessee stays afloat and continues on their trajectory, I'll be shocked if South Carolina does anything different than what they're doing right now. Like
Yeah.
one of these wins would be monumental for them just as a launching point, frankly.
Mhm.
And to go. So I'm with you. Like if like that you have basically you can't afford to overlook the Big East games by any
Mhm.
means. But when
No.
it comes to resume building, basically you have Tennessee, you have South Carolina, and you have to go be Big East tournament champions, like
Mhm.
and regular season champ. Like you have to run the table in the Big East. Like
Mhm.
that's kind of the like the like that's it. Like and so to not win one of those games against one of the top 5 teams absolutely puts pressure on them going into conference play.
For sure. Yeah. Jamie, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I mean, my thoughts on kind of the topic as a whole will lead into the team I selected, which is that so much of this goes into perception, as
Mm,
far as the way that teams are viewed as a whole. Obviously, you don't look at anything in a vacuum. You're taking into account the history of a program, their success in the postseason, whether they regularly over or underachieve. You're taking into account, oh, have people been hurt? Are we predicting things based on that? And then the biggest thing that you're taking into account, in my opinion, is the conference that they're playing in. And so, as we said, for LSU, your margin is fairly slim because you're playing in a very good conference. And so you're
mhm,
very likely going to run into some potential losses as a result of that. But at the same time, for UConn, their margins are sort of slim because you don't have the opportunity for a lot of big wins. And so any potential loss is going to ding you really significantly, even if it is
mhm.
up against, a Creighton, someone who is generally a top program, someone who's going to be up there competing with you. That's just not the way that those things are generally perceived, especially when you maybe have had a couple of tough losses that people are going to use to discount you anyway. And so for me, the team that I think has some of the most to lose, I won't say like the most, but a team that I think has potentially a good bit to lose going into conference play is K-State. And that is, there's a lot going on there in general that you could get into. But number one is that the Big 12, there are more teams at the bottom that have struggled a lot than most of the other power conferences. Your perception is really low, sometimes unfairly so, I think, sometimes fairly so compared to the other Power Four conferences. I won't get into all of that right now, but if we're just talking perception, that's the reality of where we're at, is that Big 12 wins, success in Big 12 play does not buy you nearly as much as having success in, at the very least, SEC and ACC play. And Big Ten play. So the other three, power conferences, the Big 12 is certainly looked at as kind of the second tier, maybe the 1B to the 1A of the other three. And so, there's a hierarchy there in the other three. Not the point. I've been reading the comments too much. I'm trying to cover my bases. I see you guys. Thank you. To the person who said that I start yelling a lot, that's my bad, because I have noise canceling headphones, and I've never recorded with noise canceling headphones before, so I'm working on it. So I do appreciate that feedback.
It's passion. It's passion.
Sometimes I just be yelling too, but
look.
Anyway.
Look, we were talking about it earlier. I got a bunch of I'm Italian. I got a bunch of Italians in this house. Yelling just is a natural thing for me. I didn't even notice it. So
if I'm talking about the way that people need to feed the post better, it's just gonna.
That's
come
one
out,
thing Jamie
okay?
will yell about is getting the ball on the.
And that one I'm not gonna apologize for.
And that
anyway, that was gonna be my second one.
The rule book.
So, K-State has the 7th best Her Hoop stats rating right now, sitting at like a 44. They are right around there. They're sitting at 12th in the AP poll, so they're already not perceived quite as high nationally. And we use the Her Hoop stats. There's a lot of ranking metrics. A lot of them are fairly similar. There's going to be a couple spots here or there, but generally K-State right now is ranked in the AP poll lower than metrics would evaluate them as. And so when you're going into a conference that has a couple of other ranked teams, and you aren't even going to face both of them multiple times anymore. The Big 12 used to have the double round robin, which was very unique and set them apart. And so now you're going to go up against a lot of teams that are going to do very little to help you. And if you drop one that you shouldn't, they can do a lot to hurt you without a whole lot of recourse there. So it's definitely tough, and especially for a K-State that plays significantly through Ayoka Lee, and you're going into a conference where, for everything else you want to say about the Big 12, there are dominant bigs in that conference. And so that is certainly something that she's going to have to go up against. She obviously has in the past, but that's something that is going to come into play in a big way. And you also have a concerning lack of depth with some of the injuries that they've had. Giselle Sanchez was out for an extended period of time. And then you've got some transfers in that just haven't played in the Big 12 yet. And so they'll have to adjust there. And so I really wonder how that's going to go for them, only having faced one loss so far this season. Obviously being a very old team does help a lot, but didn't go up against probably the craziest schedule they possibly could have. They had really good teams that they went up against. They went up against Creighton, beat them, Belmont, beat Middle Tennessee, and I think those are all solid wins, but did lose to Duke. And beyond that, you didn't face a ton of like high major elite play. And so even if you do make it through conference play relatively unscathed, then you start wondering about the postseason. So I'm very curious to see how all of that shakes out here for K-State entering Big 12.
Yeah, I think to like spin it more positively, I think there's like more teams that have more to gain when conference play, and when it comes to the tournament, I think we're in like such an era right now where there's so much talent across the board, which we talk about all the time. But like, I don't know. I think if we were having this conversation, say like 10 years ago, there wouldn't be as much of this. Like,
I wouldn't be alive.
yeah, okay.
Close enough.
That would be 12. That would be 12.
I would be 12. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'd be. Oh, never mind.
Yeah, I'm about to say I might make a joke. You might not want to. I might.
Regardless, the sport has grown. Is my point.
Yeah.
But I think like going in, especially with these realigned conferences, and like we're going to see a lot of teams playing new conferences this year, which is really exciting. I think, like I said, like more teams have more to gain going into the new year. So again, we're going to flip the switch, and I'll start with Tyler again because again, it was kind of his thought process in this one. Shout out to him for coming up with our theme today. But yeah, I think I'm curious to hear. And it's funny because we talked about this before we recorded, but now I forget who you're going to say. So
I'm gonna look right into the camera for this one.
Who do you think has a lot to
get them? Rank Vanderbilt now. Hear me on this.
I hope the audio didn't peak. Look, man.
Preach to the choir, brother.
Only team in the top 15 net ranking who is not in the top 25 AP poll rankings, and I'm sick of it. I'm sick of this disrespect. They have several Power 4 wins. They have one loss to a good Michigan State team, and they got one of the best duos in the entire country. And it's a sophomore and a freshman doing it, okay? And I'm sick and tired of this disrespect. They received the most votes in this last AP poll, so like, people are kind of sort of taking notice. Nah, they better be in that top 25 ASAP.
That's the problem with the AP poll.
Yeah, true.
Well, we can. Yeah. Anyways,
let me not actually.
Anywho,
anyways,
but nah, Vanderbilt would have been already in their duo is ridiculous. But just Camille Pierre and Michaela Blakes, bro. Like Camille Pierre, 22.7 points per game, 11.2 rebounds, almost 4 steals. The only player in the top 10 of all 3 categories in the entire nation. Like, and then Michaela Blake's following her up with 19 points per game, 3 steals in her own right. Like, this duo is a ridiculous 2-way duo.
Yo, and not even like her stat averages. If you go and look at Camille Pierre's game log, that's nasty.
It's nasty. It's nasty. And like, I'm telling you, I have been I've been kind of quietly pushing the National Player of the Year. I know we know what the race is, but don't sleep on what this season is that she's having. But let me tell you right now, I'm looking at this schedule. Right? So they open up SEC play with Georgia, but then they go to number 16 Kentucky, number 25 Ole Miss, number 6 LSU, all 3 on the road back to back to back. Then they host Tennessee. Play Arkansas at home, and then they go to Alabama. That's a heck of a lot of ranked opponents back to back to back.
That's
right.
Well,
and let's also talk about. You want to talk about Vanderbilt being underrated? That would imply there's some teams above them that perhaps should not be, and some of them are on that list you just mentioned that they will be playing soon.
I mean, to be fair, Vanderbilt's been like 26th, if that's
I'm done being fair. I want them in my dang poll.
I mean, but let's put it this way. Let's put it this way. Like let's go by her hoop stats rankings. Right now, they're sitting at 16. Kentucky, give me a guess right now if you aren't looking at it. What do you think Kentucky's at in her hoop stats ranking?
If it were up to
24.
me,
I'm just guessing. I said
go
24.
ahead.
Lower?
Out of the rankings?
More? Bro, they're 50.
Damn.
That's
what I mean.
So as far as again perception wise, there are a lot of massive opportunities there for Vanderbilt.
Yes, so that's where I just like if they come out and they run the table with these first 3 games, Georgia, Kentucky, Ole Miss, which to me they should win those games like that on the road. Like
the only thing I will say is. Very young on the road
for sure, and that's
it
my
would
worry.
Be tough. It would be if they do it. It's like don't just put them in the rankings.
Yeah.
top 10 them immediately.
Like that's
Yeah.
that's the type of dialogue I'm ready to have. Like if they're
Yeah.
like I'm holding off right now I'm just at they need to be ranked, and the fact that they're not is egregious. But
Yeah.
when it comes to I'm ready to jump on with Vanderbilt. This is like my chosen team of the year, where I'm just like I am pushing this team because this duo is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And with Shea Rowley, like the program that is being built at Vandy is looking incredible for now and into the future. So
Soon
that game at
they'll put their bench
LSU,
at the right spot. Soon they'll put their bench in the right spot, and it'll be all.
I think that's I honestly, like, if a voter came up to me and was like, "Look, I just can't handle their court," I'd be like, you know what, I understand, because
The
it's
AP voters
weird.
are just like they just
really
hold the
hurts my
vendetta,
brain.
so they're like,
Honestly,
this is the only way that I can make my voice heard.
Yeah, and so, but the fact that Vanderbilt is not ranked, like their schedule is a little bit more front heavy in the SEC. Like they play at Texas, they play at Oklahoma, and they host South Carolina towards the end of the SEC schedule. So like there's certainly some more opportunities to get some ranked wins later on. But really, it's this opening stretch of SEC games for them where they're gonna get the chance to prove it. And I'm certainly have my hesitancies with the youth, but also like the performances have been so good and so consistent against like some not like any crazy fellow Power 4 teams by any means, but like you get a win against Arizona, you play Michigan State close, that game was tight. You get a win against Miami, like those are solid Power 4 wins. They're not world beaters by any means, but like I'll take those wins. Like those are on the resume, and so now is the time. Like I feel like we'll learn a lot in these Kentucky and Ole Miss games exactly where they stand, because I'm not exactly confident they're going into LSU and winning that game. I don't know, but if they can beat Kentucky and Ole Miss, I at least feel like I get a better idea in the tiers of the SEC where Vanderbilt falls. So I'm really looking at these first 3 games, and then the LSU and Tennessee games to follow that up are kind of the cherry on top of what could be a massive SEC run for Vandy to open it up.
Yeah, I agree. And also, somewhat side note is that I'm going to clip the part where you say, I have a hesitancy with the youth, and that's just going to be my reaction meme the rest of my life.
That's going to be my reaction to Tyler.
I'm about to say, like, I'm the one saying it is kind of crazy, but
Tyler in general.
it's me. It's me talking to myself in the mirror.
Yeah, I was writing about Camille Pierre last week. I do like a weekly player of the year ranking, and she was kind of like my wild card pick last week, because it was like, okay, she's definitely playing like a player of the year. The stats and the metrics are there, but what she has going against her, obviously, is the fact that like Vanderbilt isn't ranked. She's not a kind of in the caliber of schedule that say like Paige, Hannah, etc. are on. But like I was looking at some of those games. One game, I think she scored like 40 something points in 18.
Yeah, she went off her 40 the week after they were my team to watch.
Yeah. There you
go.
Like,
yeah, no, it was.
She knew she had to.
It was 42 and 18. That
42
game.
and 18, like that's just now.
And shooting like a disgusting percentage too.
Yeah, 67 from the field, 67% from the field.
What?
And no threes, by the way. This is all just dominance inside.
Like,
it's also important to note. Like, this is all just pure which is also, like, she's like going into the SEC. Like, that is, certainly something like it's going to be different in that sense. Like the physicality and whatnot that you're going to be seeing down low, the size and everything, as opposed to some of the teams that they played in the non-conference. But like, I don't know, man. I just trust it. I do. Like I'm all in. I might be completely wrong, but like I'm drinking the Kool-Aid right now when it comes to Vandy. I am.
I love it. Jamie, did he steal your thing, or do you have a?
No, I'm on it. So first of all, I will say that a quick side note is if you want to talk about teams that have something to lose, I'm not gonna go into the analysis on this, but Kentucky,
absolutely,
gonna be seeing Mississippi State, who is also maybe potentially mildly underrated, or at least like under the radar for what they are and for what their capabilities are. And so they could have something of a rude awakening. I'm not going to say that they will, but it's certainly possible. The table is set for that to occur if they aren't ready coming into it. But again, to me, a lot of it is perception. And so it's really hard because there's so many teams that have a lot to gain. I think that one of them that I was looking at was Mississippi State. They're hovering right on the outside of the rankings. They're a team that's entering SEC play kind of middle of the pack. They are going to go through sort of the gauntlet to start out, going at Kentucky, then hosting both South Carolina and Oklahoma, before finally going on the road to Georgia, where, you should feel decently confident about picking up a win there. And again, a very similar sort of resume to Vanderbilt, where your only loss so far is to a very solid Georgia Tech team on the road. And so I'm certainly fascinated by them, but I do think they are a little bit on people's radar. One that, again, I've got to use my ins the way that I can see some games live, maybe pick up some stuff that other people aren't seeing. So I've got sort of a flyer here, and that's I think that in the Valley, I think UNI has a lot to gain, because right now that's a team that's sitting at 6-6 that people are really not thinking much of. But they have a player that is capable of taking over a game in a way that most people are not. Most teams do not have. In Maya McDermott, she's done it against power for opponents, and she absolutely will do it in the Valley. They have a freshman who jumped into the starting lineup when Grace Buffelli went out, and Elise Yeager, who has blown me away. Like, she has solid footwork, she can finish around the rim, and more than anything else, she just works really, really hard and mostly does the right thing for them, which, when you're coming in to fill in for Grace Buffelli, who has been incredible for the Panthers, that's really what you need. Side note, she can step out and she can hit a 3. And so, again, when you're going into Valley play, that's massive. This is a team that was a last-second 3 from Deanna Gaston away from beating Auburn. This is a team that beat Iowa State. This is a team that just competes in a conference that is one of, if not the best mid-major conference in the country, in the Missouri Valley. And so I think that they're going to go out there, and I think that they have a really, really good chance at racking up a lot of wins in conference play. They put themselves through a tough non-conference schedule. They do not shy away from that at all. This is the second year in a row that they've done that, with some injuries going around. And so, I mean, look, I've said it before, Tanya Warren, everybody in the country is so glad that you love UNI, because dear God, put you at a
the Brinks truck would have been coming back. Like,
yikes. Everyone would be shaking in their boots a little bit. But no, I mean, I think that they have a great chance at being competitive, just not day in and day out, but for the Valley title, when we're talking about them going up against Belmont, Drake, Murray State. I think it's going to be a really competitive conference, and they put themselves in a great position with the caliber of teams they face in the non-con to, I mean, potentially run the table and be able to get that automatic berth to the NCAA tournament. There's also, in the Valley, you can get 2 teams. That, I mean, it is tough, but you can. And so to beat an Iowa State, to be competitive against Auburn, they've set themselves up that if they really get it done in Missouri Valley play, they're at least going to be in the conversation come selection Sunday now.
Sunday.
Yeah,
I think so.
still
Yeah,
Sunday.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you right now, every other school is hoping that they don't. So, like, no, I gotta promise you, after seeing, man, like, they got some buckets on that team. Usually, I don't want to see UNI in.
That's the thing, is that, like, you never want to see whoever the Valley's auto bid.
No, literally never. Whether it be Drake, bro. Belmont has been, like, in the past. Like, I don't want to see. Those are teams, like, I think it, like, to me, it's them and the Ivy. Like, I never want to see on my schedule.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, it's always those 2 mid-major conferences that I never don't keep them away.
They schedule hard, like, they've been through it, they've seen it before, they're smart, they have great coaching, there's a lot of consistency there. Like, that's why I pound the mid-major drum so hard, because, like, man, is it good basketball.
Yeah, I'm with you.
That's wild. Going to my team that has a lot to gain. Shocker, just like Tyler's was a shocker. I picked Michigan.
What? No way.
Okay.
Michigan?
Oh my goodness.
Who do they have on their team?
Oh, she wasn't even playing last night.
She wasn't. I was
they
so
had
sick.
her on their team.
Oh my goodness. I turned that game on. I was curled in my bed. I was all comfy waiting for Big Ten After Dark. And I was all comfy, and I was like, no, Sila.
Yeah.
The way my face dropped, I was just like,
oh, bro. I was so disappointed.
Yeah.
But continue,
And
Chelsea. Sorry,
that
I had to share my pain.
disappointment has been because all I talk about on this podcast is
I know.
Michigan.
I was ready to see. Like
Really,
I've been locked in after the South Carolina game, but then
yeah,
you've been banging the drum. Like I
I
was ready to
have
see it
been.
against USC,
Oh,
and it just I hope
but
she plays against UCLA.
yes, me too. And I haven't heard anything today about the injury. Hopefully, it's not anything. It was a non-contact kind of thing. We're talking
Mm,
about Side of Swords if you didn't catch that, but didn't play last
yes.
night against UCLA. Um, Michigan heads into a fairly difficult Big Ten conference, but I think that last night's game against USC without Sila was such a good indication of like where the rest of the team is as well. Obviously,
Mm.
her and Olivia Olson lead the team in scoring. They're off by I think like 2/10 of a point in terms of average. But last night, Jordan Hobbs was on one. It was so fun to watch. She was
Yeah.
shooting from three. She was defending. She brings that like veteran presence to a very young. It's like Vanderbilt as well. There's a lot of freshmen on this Michigan team,
Mm.
and they do have a pretty heavy beginning of their schedule when it comes to conference play. They play UCLA on New Year's Day, then they play Ohio State, and then they kind of have a stretch of like Purdue, Washington, Rutgers, Minnesota. Then they have the big Michigan State game, and then they play Iowa at the end, Illinois. So they
Mm.
kind of have up and down in terms of their difficulty of
Those
schedule.
LA Big Ten trips are gonna be wicked for teams, man.
Yeah,
Playing that,
seriously, that
like, oh my
UCLA
goodness.
USC back to back.
Yeah,
They played
yeah,
UCLA
yeah.
and USC. But last night, the game, despite the fact that they were missing like half of their, duo in terms of scoring, they were in that game until I'd say like the fourth quarter. Like the fourth quarter was when
Yeah.
USC
Mhm.
started to pull away.
Very
I
much
mean,
so.
Kiki Irafan was out for a lot of the game due to foul trouble. But again,
Mhm.
like that's how you play against Kiki. Like you try and get
Offensive
her.
fouls that they drew cleverly.
Oh yeah, no, they were locked in with it, and Kiki just came in and flipped the switch. But like
Oh, for sure. But
the
like, what
it's
do you
very
do about
similar to like the LSU Albany game, where like if you didn't watch the game and you just look at the box score, you'd be like, oh, USC coasted. No, no,
that?
no.
No,
Like
they
this
didn't.
was first through third quarter. This was a tight game. Like we were kind of waiting for USC to flip the switch, and they eventually did, but it took a minute.
Yeah, and they have so many. I mean, other again, we talk about the Silas Swords and the Olivia Olsons who are their lead scorers. Jordan Hobbs is another one of their like bigger, but she's like a senior. You also have, and I'm gonna butcher her name, but Greta Camp Schroeder,
Mm.
again, another like tall guard. Who else? Mila Holloway is another freshman that's really good. Has been playing a little bit more. With that played more with Sila out, and so they just have like these. They have a lot of depth, I think, on a very young team, and it's going to come out a little bit more, I think, as they get more experience. But
Mm.
I mean, I'm looking now; they have two seniors on the team. Yeah, two. And the rest
Very young.
are very young. They have so many freshmen, and so it's just like Sila obviously getting healthy, her and Olivia Olson continuing, Jordan Hobbs continuing to play like she played yesterday. Like I think there's just a lot of potential there, and we'll see how Big Ten goes for them because, of course, again, you have UCLA and all those top schools, but
Mhm.
they got their LA road trip out of the way fairly early. So even if they go 0-2 in that stretch, I mean, they can still make up for it in the end
Mhm.
with some of these teams, and maybe make it like a good run in the Big Ten conference. And if they get a spot going into the tournament, and see how that goes for this year. But I do think again with this team similar to Vanderbilt, where it's like we're seeing now, like in 2-3 years, two
Oh, it's
or
gonna be
1 to 2 years,
terrifying. Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
gonna be
I mean,
terrifying.
honestly, even if they make their way into March, and like at that point, like obviously postseason basketball is different, but like if you even just like having the full regular season, if they can stay healthy and just continuously get the reps in, like obviously we don't like hopefully Sila is back ASAP, and like I said
Yeah,
for the game against UCLA, hopefully, but
yeah,
even just by the end of the season, like
mhm,
the level of that we could see from this team is super intriguing to me. So I'm with you. Like if they
yeah,
can steal some of these ranked wins, and obviously they're a ranked team in their own right. So it's not like
yeah,
they
exactly.
no, and they're not a slouch in their own way. But I'm
No.
with you. Like if the wins start streaking a little bit and that confidence keeps brewing,
And the thing
I'm
with
intrigued.
their 3 losses are against, South Carolina,
Hmm.
obviously, like, best championship team, kinda thing. Then it
Hmm.
was Oklahoma,
Hmm.
which,
It was.
you were locked in for that one, and then
It was
USC.
indeed.
And in all 3 of those games, they were literally in it until the end. Like, they only lost to South Carolina by, like, 6 points, which with South
Yep.
Carolina, that's, like, almost a win in itself, obviously. not like an actual win, but a moral victory. Then with Oklahoma again, they were in it until like the fourth quarter. Same thing with USC, they were in it until the fourth quarter. And so it's like not by a lack of like talent. There's just like
they're showing
having
they
to
have it.
close
They
out
just
games.
can't sustain it through 40 quite yet.
It's
and
kind of a
that is
stamina
being young.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
which is again like a telltale sign of a young team. So yeah, it's not by lack of talent, it's not by lack of roster ability or any of that. But yeah, having Sila back hopefully will give them a boost against UCLA. I mean, miracles happen. Maybe they'll hand UCLA their first loss of the season.
I'm here for the chaos. I'm here for it.
I'm here for
Maybe
the.
they'll do it
I'd
without
be-
Sila.
That'd
Yeah.
be talking about chaos for real. Lordy.
Look, you want to talk
We would
about
come on this
scouting a
podcast next
team?
week. Yep.
It's really tough to scout a team that's missing one of their best players.
Mm-hmm. I'm intrigued. I mean, look, the way they played USC close, like I said, like you would not know it if you didn't watch that game. But like Kiki Iriafen like came in and reminded everyone, like that was a Kiki reminder game. Like that fourth quarter was like, I know like everyone is talking about Olivia Miles going number 2, and like I think that is probably going to happen. I think it's probably the best fit draft wise. But like, please do not sleep on Kiki. I cannot emphasize this enough. And like that fourth quarter was prime. Like that's Kiki, and that's what happens.
Juju had 7 assists in the game, which is huge because we've been talking like for the past few weeks about how their assist numbers need to go up, and Juju especially. Like, and I was watching her like dish it out, and I was like, the vision. Not that there is much of a
the
vision.
casual like 31 points or whatever that she had. Like 31. Just
when their offense was actually moving again, and when she wasn't sitting in the corner because whoever brought the ball up didn't want to initiate the offense. Let me stop.
Just Juju things,
Just Juju things, exactly.
Just Juju things.
Oh man, just so good. Anyway, that game was really good. I was really glad I was able to watch it. But Big Ten conference play is going to be absolutely wild now with UCLA and USC in there, which is going to be really fun to watch. But
my little calendar with games and the networks for all of them, my little planner that I keep all of them in because I got tired of opening the ESPN app 8 million times.
It's just that wall with all the yarn.
It's getting well worn.
Yeah. I believe it. Yeah, there's a lot of games. We're in the thick of it now. It is color coded. I love that. I wish I was that organized.
Yeah, honestly, we'll get there eventually.
It's an illusion.
Anyway,
we're gonna show you my office, and I won't.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Oh man, yeah, but we're gonna wrap this up for this year. Wow, that's one of those.
Whoa!
See you next year. That's so wild.
That's
but yeah, we'll be back next Tuesday. I think we'll go back to our like regular schedule. We've been a little bit
next
weird
week. Yeah, it's been a weird couple of weeks with holidays and stuff.
We've been holiday schedules, travel, etc., etc. But we'll be back next week, early next week. Sometimes it's Monday, sometimes it's Wednesday. Who knows? Sometimes we just drop in.
You'll see us soon.
Yeah, we'll see you soon. Happy New Year to everyone,
and
happy conference play to everybody who celebrates. Excited to get back into that. So we will catch you next time. Make sure to subscribe to Her Hoop Stats. Follow us all if you're watching on video. We have our usernames down below. And yeah, subscribe for more episodes of The Press Break and other podcasts on Her Hoop Stats.